Next day.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Vaughn from Next Level. Now, I know you've seen me on our other podcast, How She Got There, but I've snuck across the lines here to Next In to give you a very special interview today with Robert Silva. And he's going to talk to us about his career in tech and how he's transforming that into a career and interview coaching platform. I know right now we're in a very scary time in the tech world. 200,000 layoffs as of today. He's going to help us navigate that and get our mind in that mindset that we need to strive and stand out in the crowd. Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Jamie. And yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very, very well. Now, I have been in that situation many times not many times, 3 times I've been laid off. And I wish I had somebody to talk to and to kind of navigate those waters. But I would love for you to tell us your backstory and how you got into career coaching.
It's an interesting story. My career has taken me from Microsoft through Intel, Amazon, Google, Facebook, and several smaller companies as well. Each time I've hit upon that moment, that moment of recession where there's had to be some sort of downsizing for budgets and things. I've only really been hit by layoffs about twice in my career, but each time it was a very scary thing that happened, right? And the second time just happened to me, so but I'm also able now after all these years, I actually have my strategy set up and have refined it, and on top of having experienced as being a manager and mentor at all these places, I recognize that there is some value to being able to pontificate and help people, get themselves prepared and be able to provide some useful real world advice, as well as practical preparation tips.
So what did you do in the tech world?
I started off as a software engineer.
Okay.
I actually worked on compiler and development tools back at Microsoft, and then when I left Microsoft, I transitioned into a senior technical program management role. My last role, I was a principal technical program manager, and at Life 360, one of my favorite jobs I ever had. I want to give them a plug because I think that their app is absolutely amazing. Family safety and emergency services, anti-theft. I mean, it helps you to keep track of your kids and your elder parents. And if your 20-year-old or 16-year-old kid gets in an accident, it will notify you and then notify emergency services extremely quickly. We've been members since like 2009, and then I got lucky and found myself as an employee in 2020, and it's a fantastic place to work. And unfortunately, the economy and this upcoming recession hit them just as hard as it hit everybody else. And so now I'm using my own advice to get prepared and start getting myself out there to find my next role.
So what are the trends that you're seeing that have kind of started these mass layoffs?
So, everybody here is probably very familiar watching the news over the last year. I mean, it started off with economists like giving us the big scary warnings about a year ago that inflation was running away, and we were looking at an upcoming recession, and life would get really difficult. Around mid-year, the media started to really catch hold of it because people were really paying attention. You start hearing rumors of big layoffs that were going to be happening at the big tech companies. But, I've been doing the coaching thing for about 2.5 years now, as a side hustle. And they were still hiring like crazy back in July, August, and even in September. So, my coaching business was doing almost too well because I was having to really meter my time with a full-time job during the day and then evenings and weekends coaching people. But then October comes along and the first gauntlet drops with the Twitter layoffs. I mean, when you see 50% of the workforce being shown the door, that's the catalyst. That's all it really needed. At least that's from my observation. That seems to be what happened. And then all of a sudden you hear, Meta goes and they announce that they're going to do 11,000 people. You hear that Google's going to be, Google was recent, but Amazon before Christmas announced 18,000. And then you had Google with their 13,000 and then Microsoft with 10. And it spiraled, right? As everybody kept on, looking at their bottom line and saying because when we start screaming recession and we start screaming these kinds of warnings, people naturally tighten their wallets, and all of a sudden, and companies do that. And so revenues go down, and in order to be able to balance and get revenues going, they lay people off. Mm-hmm. So there's 200,000 people out there looking for work, and the jobs will come back.
Right.
We've all been through this. You've been through it 3 times. You've seen it. You've seen the things turn around as employers start realizing, hey, we let go too many people, or, and so then they have to turn around and bounce back and start hiring people again. And then there's an awful lot of senior people that end up leaving the companies and form new companies, mm-hmm. startups and new service providers. And so you'll see jobs coming back. It'll be probably mid to end of year that you'll really start to see that accelerate. But even now, the word is that a lot of these companies are starting to look at hiring contractors, because they've got products that are unfinished, and they've anticipated schedules that they can't meet anymore because they don't have the resourcing for it. And so, this is where me as a service provider, as a coach, and helping with your resume and your online profile, I'm actually, going to give tips and say, this is what you want to focus on if you're at this stage in your career. And this is what you should focus on if you're early stage in your career. And this is how you present yourself in interviews, and be able to set up a line of communication that's going to be comfortable for both parties. Mm-hmm. The job interviews, are a bit deceiving because they don't necessarily reflect how you're going to perform in the job. Well, what they really are is a way for people to tell, like, one, are you truthful in the background that you've presented yourself? So, like, are you able to represent the experience and the information that you put there? And are you a good person that I would want to work with? That's mm-hmm. almost the number one thing that we walk away from any interviews and say, yeah, this person knows what they're talking about, and I would really love to work with them. Mm-hmm. And so when you realize that, that's when we start gearing how we go into those conversations and how we answer those questions in order to be able to present ourselves as somebody that everybody wants to work with. That would mm-hmm. be a great addition to a team. And we talk about things like intellectual humility. We talk about honesty and willingness to, like, being able to show that you're willing to learn all the time. Mm-hmm. And that you're constantly striving to, like, improve yourself. And I know, like, I'm a family guy. I've got kids and everything is, heavily scheduled, but being able to, take that time for yourself and mm-hmm. to develop your skills and get yourself to a point where you can, that you're demonstrating to your present employer and to future employers that you're somebody that's worthwhile being promoted, that, right. that, or being given a modicum of responsibility, mm-hmm. And be able to drive things forward. So, those things are really important to be able to communicate in the interview, mm-hmm. as well as I'm stuttering a little bit, but to have your answers prepared prior to going into the interview. So there's, an awful lot of resources online where you can see some of the stock questions that get asked, and to have your answers prepared that you'll be able to go through in a very logical manner. They're not pre-scripted.
Right.
But what you want to do is you want to be able to have your notes, your bullet points there to highlight the key things that you want to communicate about that experience that makes you a better candidate mm-hmm. than any of your competitors.
Yeah. So you've just gotten the news. And by the way that so many of these people have been told that they are losing their jobs by just finding out that they were locked out of the computer systems, to me is mind-boggling. I couldn't imagine that, because the 3 times I was laid off, it was done in a very kind and caring manner. In fact, one of the CEOs sat with me and sobbed with me, and he said, "I can't believe we're having to do this. This is not what I want to do at all, but we will help you." And they did. They helped us through, every single person that was laid off. And then you're looking at, it feels very cold. How does somebody navigate those first few days of feeling of that anger and disappointment if something that happened like this?
So, I mean, I'll tell my perspective, or at least my experience was that, my manager actually, it was a hastily scheduled meeting, but he gave me the time to be able to, ask questions, and we went over things, and it was still a shock. I just gotten promoted to being a principal TPM 4 months earlier, and I'd delivered a profoundly huge program portfolio that transformed the company and from a strictly software to a hardware and software-based company. And all of a sudden, I'm being told that my position is no longer doesn't exist. And so, what I ended up doing was, you take a deep breath and you ask as many questions. There were an awful lot of my coworkers and colleagues and other managers that reached out and were, either the ones that were there, they were like commiserating and saying how much they were in shock. Having that support network is really helpful. Now, when I hear of, Google just locking people out at 3 a.m., that's from my perspective, that's fairly cruel. I understand the business logic behind it.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a different way of doing it than that.
Mm-hmm.
But that is, I have no control over that, and so you just have to accept it and move on. One of the big things that I did, and of course you notice I've got an awful lot of big boy toys back here, and I build instruments, and so. And so what I did do is I distracted myself, trying to sort of grok what was going on, and I went off and started working on my instruments a little bit more. Or I got, instead of letting my carpool people for the kids go and pick up the kids from school, I volunteered to go and do something just to distract, and find something else that'd be a more positive experience. And it's not going to dull the pain, but what it will do is it gets you off your butt and moving again, right? Whereas even, you read LinkedIn these days, and every other posting up there is somebody that's saying, I've been sitting here for a week trying to understand what's going on. And, going off and doing something else and doing something that's sort of soul healing, it will help you to get over the shock. And then you start thinking about, what is it that I want to do next? Like, where should I really go? And for me, that was, okay, I'm a principal TPM. I think it may be time for me to go to the next level. And, I've done things that now qualify me for a director or VP role. What do I need to be able to do to make my profile look and communicate that? Yeah. And so, those are, even myself, I will go and look for somebody else to go and do a critique of what I've got and say, does this communicate to you director material or VP material? Am I a director of engineering according to, what you read here? And so you start to academically work on your profile and build that outside image. And then, of course, there's this temptation, like the minute you find out, to go straight in and start diving in and sending resumes out. But you really need to sort of get your resume up to snuff before you start sending things out. Otherwise, you're sending out things that only support doing what you've been doing for however X number of years that you've been doing it.
Mhm.
So be deliberate. That's it. And then of course, once you get your resume up to par and you start, get your LinkedIn profile updated so that people are going to be compelled to reach out and talk to you. It will take a couple weeks. That's been my general observation is, you start throwing resumes out, you get your LinkedIn profile tidied up, and it takes about 2 to 3 weeks before you start seeing things coming back at you.
Mhm.
And I mean, you don't want to be sitting idle for those 2 weeks, but you get yourself prepared,
Right.
mentally and emotionally, because this is all of a sudden something that you're going to have to communicate.
Mhm.
And I just posted an article not too long ago where one of the key lines that I wanted to communicate was being laid off is not being terminated. You've not been terminated for performance reasons.
Mhm.
You've been let go simply because budgets or some kind of business decision was made. You've been let go for no fault of your own. So therefore, do not feel ashamed to
Mhm.
actually say that. When somebody says, "Why are you no longer there?" Well, I was part of a 15% riff. And then secondly is you have a network.
Mhm.
You have people that you've worked with in the past that you've that you reported to, or people that reported to you. Leverage that.
Mhm.
Find out where they're at. Get yourself familiar with their companies. Ask them if you're interested in the company and what they're doing. Ask your contacts
Mhm.
to put you in touch with hiring managers for the roles that you see that are open at those companies. I mean, I've just had a couple friends, one at Apple and another one at Meta, who they've said they've been glad to be to walk my resume over to the hiring manager. And again, I mean, it's all based on how strong a relationship you had with them. I'm fortunate in that, on my LinkedIn profile, I've got like 2 or 3 dozen people who've left me some really nice recommendations. Those are the first people I went and hit up and said, hey, I really loved working with you. Like, is there anything going on over where you're at? And so, being able to leverage those connections and be able to will get you further along faster.
Mhm. So, how does someone go about getting people to do recommendations on their LinkedIn? I know that most people don't have them, but they have people who love them and love working with them. How do they get that network to help them do that?
Pretty much everybody that reached out to me the day that I got let go and were, oh my God, I can't believe you're gone. I'm like, what would really help me out is if you could go and just say some nice things.
Mhm.
Like, be honest, don't say anything that you wouldn't feel comfortable, but go and leave something for me on LinkedIn. And I didn't have to do very much persuasion, myself.
Good.
And so there are an awful lot of really brilliant recommendations, including my former manager, who he was really honest, but it was a sparklingly amazing recommendation, right?
Mhm.
And so I've even gone in and copied and pasted it into a Google Doc and turned it into a PDF, because when I submit a resume, if they have an area where it says, attach a cover letter or whatever, I'll throw that in and say, rather than trying to, blow smoke up my own bum, I'm going to put this here, and you decide whether or not I'm somebody that you want to talk to.
Yeah. I
And
love that. I hate cover letters, especially
oh,
when you have to go in and fill out all that stuff online anyway, or submit your resume online, and then it tells you to actually now go in and re-add everything you just put in, and then give me a cover letter. At that point, you're so aggravated. I love the idea of taking your recommendations and putting them as your cover letter.
it was an idea I just came up with, like, even in the last couple of weeks. I didn't think of it until like it was actually when I started seeing all these recommendations coming in and you have to approve them for them to appear. I'm
Right.
going, my God, I mean, like, does anybody ever scroll all the way down to the bottom to go see your recommendations? Well, I'm going to just copy them and throw them in a doc, and then I'm going to send them out to people. And so, that way you can keep your resume down to the 2 to 3 pages.
Right.
And you've got a whole bunch of testimonials in another document where people can go in and they go, wow, this person's maybe somebody I want to talk to, because if they gathered that many positive recommendations, then there's somebody I want to be able to know.
Yeah.
And so and then that then leads back to your resume. So I mentioned kind of earlier, depending on the stage of your career, I mean, people that have been in the industry or in whatever, whether it's aerospace, technology, advertising, marketing, blah blah blah. If you've been in it less than 5 years, then it's pretty hard to list big wins, because you're usually one of the soldiers. Right? You're not necessarily a commander or a leader, but people who've been in their careers for a while, and I've been around now for I don't want to admit too much, but it's like 30 years. And so I have, had the opportunity to lead a whole bunch of projects. So when you go through and you start listing your experience, your workplaces, don't put the tasks that you did. List the projects or the contributing items that were big wins. And use metrics wherever you can. So for instance, I led this transformational program that took my last company and took the hardware from the 2 companies that were acquired, and we had to merge all the back-end systems together, a lot of the data from all the customers into one accessible set of data, and so that accounts and things could now transfer. Like a person who was a tile account holder would now have a 360 account. And so so you've got cloud services, then you've got the applications where you want to be able to see the hardware that you bought in this family safety app.
Right.
And so that was a year-long program that essentially changed the entire business. So what do you think I put in as one of my bullet points of experience underneath that heading line? Was ran a transformational project that was a 1-year project. It shipped within 5% of our original deadline date, and we achieved hit budget. And so you list the accomplishments, and you use metrics where you can, because numbers will always provide a little bit more oomph, a bit more power to your assertion. At other places I've put in that I've was able to save $200,000 in terms of operational expenses by being able to rebuild and addition through subtraction, shrink our overall server base down to from 26 down to 12 really serious machines, and so that saved us money on colo space rental and roughly and also support cost to this tune of $200,000 for the small company. But those are the kinds of things that you want to show. They're quantified success, right? They're it's not like you can go, well, I did this, and then you have nothing to be able to show for it. You want to be able to show that there's actually a result that you know of that was a big impact to the company that you worked for. And for the I'm kind of stumbling right now, but for the you want to take the top, say, most recent 4 or 5 positions and do that. Be able to add 2 or 3 of these big achievements, and then you don't need to fill everything in. You can just list the next set of companies with the roles that you had, and details can be available on request.
Good. Those are great ideas. So say I'm somebody who hasn't interviewed in 10 years. And now I'm back in the market, and I've been interviewing people for jobs, and that now I'm realizing, oh, it is very different on the flip side. How do
Mhm.
you get that mindset to be able to stand out in the sea of people who some are going to be really a lot better than you, some are not? How do you wade through that sea of applicants and then sit down in that interview and have the right mindset and be able to project really and truly who you are?
The I discovered this when I was interviewing for Google, and because when Google contacted me, I was thinking, "There's no way. I'm not I'm not at that high bar level that you hear that they look for,
Mhm.
or at least I didn't feel like it. My confidence level was not that great, and but I thought, well, you never ever turn down the opportunity to talk to anybody from Google if they want to
Right.
talk to you.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go in. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to have a conversation, and I'm going to give it my best shot. And I'm not going to allow myself to be nervous because I know I'm not going to get it.
Mhm.
Right. And so, the initial phone screen with HR goes through. Everything went well. They scheduled the phone screen with a technical person, and I get on that call, and I just said, I'm going to treat it like a coffee talk. I'm going to go out and have coffee with a colleague or like somebody I just met, and we're just going to tell them about me. And so that's essentially what I did. They asked questions, I provided answers. They dug in. They asked follow up questions to dive in deeper.
Mhm.
And because have a good technical background, I was able to answer very easily. And because I had treated it as just a conversation, I didn't get nervous. So there was no vapor lock, like the when your brain just goes and so I was able to answer these questions. And at the end of the 40-45 minutes,
Mhm.
he asked if I had any questions, and one of my very first questions was like, "Is there anything that I could have said or told you about in the interview that I haven't told you that would convince you that I should go on to the next level?"
Mhm.
And his response was, "Oh no, you great. I'm going to recommend that you go to the we bring you in for the full loop." And of course, I was just, wow, okay, great, that's really cool. And then in the immediate moment, you get a little intimidated, but then it's like, okay, well, it's still not going to happen. I just fooled this person, or
Mhm.
whatever, right? But I am gonna go in and I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. I'm just gonna have conversations with people. And so, they flew me down to Sunnyvale, put me in a tiny little interview room, and people were filing in and out, and I had conversations with people. And and it was, again, I'm having coffee with these people, and they're interested in what I've done, and I get to ask them a whole bunch of questions. And the 6 hours of interviews went by in a flash, right?
Mhm.
Whereas in every other interview I ever went through, I was totally wrung out by the end of the day, right? Even by the third or fourth interview, I'm like, I don't really want to do this anymore. Here it was just, the 6 interviews went by. It's 5 in the afternoon, and they come in to escort me out, and I'm like, is that it? Is it done? I sure you don't want to send anybody else in? And they're going, you did the whole interview loop. I mean, like, what's going on? Like, how? And so they stuck me in the car, 5:30 p.m. on a Tuesday night, flew back to Seattle, and 8:30 in the morning on Thursday, I get a call from recruiting and said, you got like strong hires across the board. We're putting you into the hiring committee. Expect managers to call you and starting to try and get you to come to their teams for jobs. And of course, total shock. But then there's this real realization at that moment. It's like, I think I've hit on something,
Mhm.
right? And so it worked again at Facebook, and it worked for Life 360. Just go in and be comfortable, be confident. I started, I've always, I'm Canadian, so Canadians are always sorry for everything. So there's this like, have the intellectual humility, that, when you give an answer and they say, is that the best possible solution that you could have come up with? And it's like, I'm sure there are better solutions out there, but in the heat of the moment, this is the best thing that we came up with, and it seemed to work.
Mhm.
And I'm open to be able to talk about some other solutions that you may have. And so, being able to demonstrate these ideals as well as being comfortable and confident
Mhm.
in the interview, and it's all tricking your mind to believe that this is not a high stress situation.
Mhm.
It's a chat, right? Which really is all it is.
Mhm.
Is now something that I go in with any of my clients, the people who hire me, and the first thing I try to stress to them is, you need to treat this like a conversation.
Mhm.
You can't let yourself get all stressed out. You can't, because at the moment you get stressed out, you talk too much, or
Mhm.
you say something that you never intended to, and you can't rewind the tape and
Right.
splice it out. You've got to now live with it. Whereas if you're comfortable and you're confident, you're able to answer these questions. You're able to think on your feet without having any stress. And again, remember, it's a conversation, so it's not like there's anything that you should be afraid of saying.
Mhm.
It's only when you're stressed that your brain decides to say stuff that you never really intended to say.
Right.
And so myself and my clients, we work on this confidence. We develop stories so that, like, part of the thing about having confidence is that you've done some preparation before you go
Mhm.
in, right? So, you prepare your experiences as stories. Amazon famously tells everybody to do things in the star format. And that is actually the best way to present your experiences, is to do situations, tasks, actions, and results.
Mhm.
And again, that goes back to the resume. Your results should have some sort of quantifiable thing to it, to say, like, I delivered this huge project for like a 20% net revenue increase,
Mhm.
or like we saved operational expenses of like $1.2 million a year, something along those lines. And you don't write it as a narrative. You don't write it as a story that you read it out. You write it as bullet points.
Mhm.
And if for the people that went to college and had to study, that writing things down in bullet points and essentially studying beforehand, it makes things fresh in your head. And so you never, even like in this now video interview world, you can have these prepared papers where you're sitting like on your desk, where you've got all your stories bullet point out, and in like 8 to 10
Mhm.
12 bullet points, and you can have them there just in case, but you're going to remember everything because you
Mhm.
just built them, right?
Right.
And so now they're just your security blanket. And so you can go in confident. You turn this into a conversation. An interview really should be just like what we're having right now. It's just a conversation where you ask questions, and I'll provide some context and detail,
Mhm.
and then I get to ask clarifying questions if something. If a question's asked and I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for, I should feel comfortable and confident enough to be able to ask a question, to be able to isolate which story I should tell.
Right.
And so these are the things that, when people say, how many sessions should I book? Well, 3 or 4. But if you're still not feeling comfortable and ready to go, then you can continue booking more. But
Mhm.
3 or 4 is generally what I recommend, to get ready for any of these interviews with any company.
Right.
And, so it's simply just to go over and get yourself in the groove and remember what it's like. And then also you have empathy for the person in the interview chair, because you yourself were an interviewer, just like
Mhm.
I was. And to know that I'm going to be providing them information that they can digest in an easier manner, because the preparing of the stories is really good, because then you start writing them in a chronologically straight line.
Mhm.
One of the most confusing things as an interviewer is to listen to somebody telling their experience and then go, oh, but I forgot, and then they go all the way back to the beginning, and then they're going jump back again, and they do this like several times, because if they forgot one thing, they forgot several.
Mhm.
And at some point you're going, so I'm really confused. Can you tell me, where are we right now in this timeline? And you're trying to type and listen at the same time. Whereas if somebody's got things prepared and they're able to tell the story in a chronological manner, it's very easy. I can then, even after the interview, sit down and transcribe everything for my feedback that I give to, to be able to go in and review and provide my opinion, whether this person's a hire, strong hire, neutral, whatever.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to work with a coach, their first session, what should they expect sitting down with you?
I'm going to ask them questions about them, and not in an interview type fashion. I'm going to ask questions because I want to know where they're at and what they're looking for. Right. And in some ways, it's almost like how a recruiter approaches somebody. If they're a headhunter and they say, like, I noticed you've been at this company for X number of years. Are you looking for something new?
Mm-hmm.
And then, go back through their experience. And during that time that they're explaining stuff to me, I'm trying to figure out, like, where do I have to take them in order for this to be interview ready?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then we start talking about, like, I'll say, well, I noticed that you probably don't have a whole lot of confidence, or you're minimizing your impact on the enterprise that you work for.
Mm-hmm.
You need to not do that. Or in the case of technical program managers like myself, the word "we" is always used because we're conditioned, like I've been conditioned in the past, to share success. But also then I'm the person that's going to have to step in front of the firing squad to assume blame for the failure. And so when I tell a story, I've fallen into the trap too many times of saying, well, we did this, we achieved this.
Mm-hmm.
And the interviewer will go, well, what exactly did you do? Well, I did all that. But then because you use the word we, you've softened the impact of what it is that you accomplished. And so one of the big conditioning things that I do is to say, forget the word "we" exists.
Okay.
I did this. Take ownership. You worked your butt off. You're the one that had to get up at 2 a.m. to go and take care of something that that fell over.
Right.
Talk about it as if you're the person that was the foundation for everything.
Mm-hmm. So, Robert, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you after watching this podcast or listening to it, how do they find you?
I wish I had a card or something to put up.
We'll put it up for you.
You can go to my website, which is www, or no, actually forget the www. Just put in prodigy-cc.com.
Okay.
And you'll be able to see essentially a background of what I've done and what I'm hoping to be able to do for you. And then there's a link there that you can go book my session. And so there's also links there you can we can do a 15-minute introductory session, for free, and get to know each other. And I'm hoping, generally when that's happened, I don't know if it's because I'm charming or just like I just look really open and easy to talk to, but people we tend to work together. And there's an awful lot of people that I still keep in touch with, even like 2 years later. They'll let me know like where they're at and what they're doing and how they're doing and how they've used things that we worked on to sort of get promoted. And that's really, really nice. I really, really appreciate because it makes me feel good that I was able to help somebody to be able to get past that stumbling block, I guess, because we do all have this tendency to undervalue our contributions.
Right.
And we really need to recognize ourselves, because who else is going to recognize us if we don't?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very true. Very true. Well, Robert, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I appreciate this. I hope it helps our listeners and viewers and everyone. If you need help in this crazy layoff time, make sure to get in touch with Robert. He'll help you walk through all of that. And also, if you're looking for tech jobs, we have them at Next Level, where we are helping our clients all over the country. And everyone, make sure to hit subscribe on the button below, and we'll be back soon with our next episode.
Next day.